As ABA continues to evolve, one model for blending compassion, connection, and evidence-based strategies is the Early Start Denver model. Today, we'll talk about why ESDM in ABA belongs in modern practice and why BCBAs and ABA therapists should see it as a powerful way to bring both science and heart into their work. Hi, I'm Shira.
And I'm Shayna. We're behavior analysts who create weekly content about how to teach children with autism so that they make real progress. And we create shareable resources to make your job just a little easier. Today's topic is all about ESDM in ABA therapy. And if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on new video releases.
I want you to think about a radio station and you're trying to listen to your favorite song and it's just a little bit staticky. So, would you try to raise the volume? Probably not. What you need to do is really get tuned into the right frequency of that radio station so that you can hear the song. Once you're there, then you can adjust the volume and all those other things. And it's similar with the kids that we work with. Instead of us, imposing our agenda on the kids because we have goals that we want to accomplish, we need to first, before anything, really tune into their frequency, and get on their level and really, hear their song, as the metaphor says. And then once you have that, you're playing the same song and it's not staticky and you're attuned to their frequency, that's when you have the opportunity to really, really teach.
I love that analogy. I wonder how long we can keep using it because I can see in like 10 more years from now, or maybe even 5 more years, people are going to be, what's a radio station? I don't understand static.
Fair.
Anyways, a question like, what is the Early Start Denver model? I feel like we've been talking about this a lot lately. The Early Start Denver model, or the ESDM, was developed way back when. I think it was early 2000s. It was developed even before that in some other capacity, but then renamed Early Start Denver model. It was developed by Dr. Sally Rogers, Dr. Geraldine Dawson, and Dr. Lori Fitzmara. Amazing. It is really for these young kiddos, early start. So, I wouldn't be using, I might be using some play-based therapy with some, older kids, but I'm not using the Early Start Denver model. So the Early Start Denver model was specifically designed for kids, early, like, ages of 12 months, if you can get somebody that young, but anybody who's really showing delays as a baby up until about 3.5 years old. So thinking about like before school, so preschool age type kids.
And the nice thing about the ESDM that was so refreshing was many of our other assessments didn't really account for developmental norms. The ESDM is, while it's grounded in ABA principles, it really does use developmentally appropriate sequence of skills. So what would be really appropriate for an 18-month-old to work on, you'll find within that ESDM. And a lot of those early skills that they work on are things like joint attention, social reciprocity. We talk about sensory social routines, are really teaching young kids how to learn before we even teach them any skills.
What I really like about the ESDM is I feel like it is kind of before the ABLLS, before the VB-MAPP. So if I were to get a young kid who has almost zero skill, even if I were to get a 3-year-old who doesn't have a lot of skill, and then I go to fill in the ABLLS or the VB-MAPP, essentially I'm filling in nothing. Like there's really not much there that I can fill in. Maybe a few learner readiness things, and maybe there's a few requesting things that they might be able to do, but that's about it. Whereas with the ESDM, it breaks it down even further. So, instead of saying, can they mand using, one word or one sign, it actually says, can they follow a point? You're like, oh, whoa, like it's really broken down. Can they shift their eye gaze to, determine what they want? Can they bring an adult something to request that they want it open? So those are the kinds of things that the ESDM goes into. They're just really a lot more subtle steps than the VB-MAPP. I feel like the VB-MAPP, one or two boxes, or the level 1 of the VB-MAPP that says 0 to 18 months, has a lot of really great skills in there, but they're really not broken down. So when the VB-MAPP says something like, I don't know, like learner receptive, something or other, like the ESDM goes into further detail. Like, do they understand, one person? Can they show you this? Can they follow one step instruction to do this? And it's really, just like I said, again, just really fine skills. And I love it. And you can then, when you're teaching the learner and the learner's learning these things, it looks like they've mastered so many skills. So if you're showing the parent, in 3 months or 6 months, like, look at all these skills your child's mastered, the ESDM just shows a lot more mastery than something like the ABLLS and the VB-MAPP would as well.
So one of the things I hear, somewhat often is, well, my child isn't doing ABA, we're doing ESDM, or we're not doing ABA, we're doing NET. And, ABA really is the umbrella term that includes all of these approaches. ESDM is a part of ABA. It really bridges some of the gaps between, traditional ABA that focus on maybe a sequence of skills and targets and a more developmental approach. It is a lot more, natural teaching, which is great because for some of the younger students, they need a little bit more of that natural teaching. And it is one of the evidence-based practices within ABA. And the nice thing about being able to see what is developmentally appropriate is also not to think we need to teach too far ahead. Sometimes we'll find ourselves teaching 3-year-olds how to answer intervals because it's on the ABLLS. And really, that's not developmentally appropriate. So it is a good way to ground our intervention in what is developmentally appropriate for this learner at this age.
Absolutely. So, Shira just mentioned, like, ESDM is ABA. If we think about the principles of ABA, one of the very first principles is making sure that you're doing an assessment. You're doing baseline and then you're continuing your assessment throughout. ESDM does that. It is normed. So we've got that data there as well. We are taking larger skills or larger goals and breaking them down into smaller goals and smaller teachable components. That's there. We're teaching with reinforcement. We're not putting edibles in their mouth, but we are teaching with praise. We're teaching with motivation, following the child's lead, contriving that motivation is there. So that's ABA. The systematic and differential reinforcement, like I mentioned, prompting, prompt fading. We're doing a lot of modeling and then fading that modeling over time. So all of those things in the ESDM are those core principles of ABA.
And one of the big differences is that you might be embedding teaching and play into some of their preferred routines and activities, as opposed to an older learner who may be able to learn to first do a little bit more of a work activity and then get access to a play activity. With some of our early learners, we're doing all the teaching within something that they enjoy. The teaching should be enjoyable, and creating these routines around things that are fun. They call them sensory social routines, where you're creating these like multi-step activities about, five little monkeys jumping on the bed or ring around the rosy. And within these routines, you want the learner to be engaged, to be having fun, and for you, the instructor, to be the one who's making it fun and really engage together in that. It's not about having an expectation and the learner has to meet that expectation and then get access to something preferred. That whole interaction should be preferred.
You said this a while ago to me, and it really resonated with me, Shira. You said, ABA used to be all about first, then, first I do something for you, and then first you do something for me, and then I get something. This is flipped around. This is the then first. Why can't people get the then first? So, the then, the fun, the motivation, all of that type of thing, we're presenting right from the get-go. There's no expectation that first you have to do something else. You're getting the fun, you're getting the play. And then we're embedding the first. We're embedding the directions and that teaching component within that play.
And what that really does is it builds relationship. And we're all about that, where kids are really going to learn better from somebody that they have a relationship with and making that connection to. Back to the example of the radio, if that's still around in a couple of years, tuning in the right place means that you're able to then adjust other things, but you have to first be attuned to the learner and have that relationship as a foundation to then be able to do other teaching.
Absolutely. And you think about the ABA therapist, it really does expand their toolbox too, right? They're all of their strategies, if they're working with adults, if they're working with kids, if they're able to work at the table and do discrete trial teaching, then if they're able to do some natural environment teaching and some, work with early learners and doing this ESDM, it's just adding to their bag of tricks.
We have included with this episode a whole freebie on play-based tips, but some of the things to think about is while you're not taking things away from them, you're putting putting activities and fun things into their routine. So if they really like to play with a car ramp, you might make noises as you're putting the cars down the ramp, or you might make them go really, really fast, or you might throw them up in the air and do a whole silly game out of that, or you might hide them, in the learner's shirt and they have to find them, and then it's hide and seek, and then they have to find the car and then put it down the ramp. So you see, you're not making them work for playing car ramp, but you're making that whole activity have so much more interaction and fun. And those are some of the ideas that are included in our play-based tips.
And the interaction of play in general, play becomes more fun when it's with an adult than it's when it's not with an adult. And so like traditionally we've had that, okay, well, we work at the table and I teach you things here, and then you go play off on your own. And kids used to look at play as, well, play is the quote unquote break from an adult. So I learned that play is not social, and that play and it is relief from work and relief from the adult. I want to do it by myself, and I want to do it my way, and I want to do it extremely rigidly sometimes. Whereas this is, play is the child's work, but play is also really fun and can be way more fun with the adult involved than with the adult is not involved. Because when the adult's not involved, I just drop my car down the car ramp and it doesn't really do much. But when, the adult is involved, there's so much more in play, like Shira mentioned. We do a lot, or we've talked a lot about sensory social routines in other podcasts. Check out episode 208 on just a whole sensory social routines and some examples and everything else in there too.
There's also a book that if you're, it's called An Early Start for Your Child with Autism, that we often will refer to parents and caregivers in how to use some of these skills within everyday routines, how to teach skills through things like bath time and playtime, and really build that relationship, because that's a great starting point.
I love that book, The Early Start. The only thing I wish is it didn't say for children with autism, because it's for more than just kids with autism. Sometimes parents just don't know how to play with their kids, or don't know, what kinds of goals or anything else to do. And it really does teach, like the first few chapters say, get down to the child's level. And for some parents, who don't play with kids on a regular basis, that's not natural for some parents. So even just saying get down to your kid's level, do over exaggerated facial expressions, and here's how you create the environment and that kind of stuff. That book is amazing. And each chapter goes through some skills, and then it has quick tips at the back of that chapter, and it says here's what we discussed, and they call it refrigerator tips. So essentially you're supposed to rip out that page. I hate ripping out pages in books, but rip out that page and put it on your fridge and do that. Don't read the next chapter until you've mastered those skills, then go on to the next chapter. So it's really great. It's great to train parents. It's great for parents who have kids that don't have autism. It's really great for therapists, RBTs who need some extra direction in terms of how to direct play sessions.
So just to address some misconceptions, ESDM is not instead of ABA. It is really the integration. It's a part of ABA. It is data driven. It is evidence based. We look at the assessment and we'll choose goals based on that assessment. And we are looking at teaching skills the same way we teach, other skills. We did a whole podcast on natural teaching and how it's not child-led doesn't mean that there's no skills being taught. So go check that one out. But it's the same with ESDM. Just because we're working within the learner's preferences and what they love to do doesn't mean that we are not teaching.
It also means that we aren't, or sorry, it also doesn't mean that we're not collecting data. That double negative always throws me off there. We are collecting data while we're doing the ESDM.
And so now with, more and more families looking for an approach to ABA that is more child-centered, that is more compassionate, that isn't just really focused on the first then or tabletop teaching. I think the ESDM has a really nice moment here to be able to stay true to what's developmentally appropriate, but yet also incorporates a lot of the best of ABA, which is our evidence-based practices, and really does that well with our youngest learners.
Absolutely. And it's a really great way to coach parents as well, because it's so much more fun for us even to coach parents in terms of here's how to play than here's how to sit in a chair and, drill your child with questions. Like it doesn't compute that way. So it's more fun to do parent coaching with that as well. I think, we can say that 20 years after the development of ESDM, or more than 20 years, it reflects the future of ABA. It really is compassionate, it's connected, it's evidence-based. I love ESDM and can't say enough great things about it.
For more information on ESDM and ABA therapy, click the link on or around this video or in the description to claim your free play-based tips. We also encourage you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos and leave a like and comment below if you have further questions.